no delays. Traffic is slow northbound from River Road to Blodgett, southbound from Arsenal to River Road. The Edens looks good. No delays to report right now on the Kennedy or the Eisenhower. An earlier crash on the exit to North Avenue has cleared. The ride is fine. Same goes for I-57 at the Bishop Ford Freeway. There is some fog and mist this morning, complicating travel a bit. We do have hundreds of flight cancellations once again today at Chicago's airports. Trains are on schedule. There are reduced schedules for Metra. However, medical personnel can now ride Metra for free during these days. That's traffic. I'm Chip Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast. From the 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning Weather Center, clouds today, 46. More clouds overnight. Early in the evening will be partly cloudy late in the evening, low 36, and that could lead to times of clouds and sun tomorrow, warming up to 57. Fog at most reporting stations this morning from O'Hare all the way to Lansing. 34 at O'Hare, next news at 7. And Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Real Estate Revealed with Randy Barcella, Sunday mornings starting at 8.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Just as we're fielding questions about all things federal and state, good question from a listener via email. As Illinois Department of Revenue granted payment extensions for the balance of the 2019 income tax and the first quarter deposit for 2020, like the feds granted extensions. Governor Jellybelly, as of Sunday, said he was still evaluating whether or not to extend the April 15th deadline. And I don't believe he commented on it yesterday.
No, he didn't. But he did comment on President Trump.
He returned my call a little after noon, and I spoke with him directly about our need for N95 masks and for ventilators. The president was very responsive, frankly. He said, he didn't so much like the idea of invoking the Defense Production Act, but he did say, what do you need? Let me see if I can get that for you.
Mm-hmm. Also, on the Pelosi bill, just more examples that we're talking about since we had that discussion about Democrats accusing Republicans of not doing enough for workers in the Senate GOP proposal. Among additional highlights, in addition to what we spoke about earlier in the show, $300 million for migration and refugee assistance. Is that American worker related? In addition to that $35 million grant for the Kennedy Center. That's odd.
Yeah, now's the time for that. Okay.
$23 million grant to Howard University.
For what?
Well, the point is that you have particular interests. You have everybody try to get something from their wish list back at home into the legislation.
But this is not the time to be selfish and needy.
This is the log rolling that happens with everything. And again, I'm not suggesting that Republicans are immune from this either, but it is worth noting it's a bit different when you're going to hold up the important parts of what we actually need from this legislation in order to engage in this sort of log rolling. For more on the health side of the topic now, we turn to Dr. Michael Lewis, who's board certified and a fellow at the American College of Preventative Medicine and American College of Nutrition. He's also the developer of the Essence program, the nation's first and largest syndrome-based disease outbreak recognition system that is used by every health department across the United States and many countries around the world. He has also written a book about sports injuries and treatment of concussions and head injuries called When Brains Collide. In addition to all that, he is a West Point grad.
Oh my gosh, his resume is fascinating.
Who completed his postgraduate training at Walter Reed and Johns Hopkins. And it was at Walter Reed's Army Institute of Research where he developed the Essence program. So there's a lot to cover with this gentleman, retired Colonel and Dr. Michael Lewis. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to be with you this morning here. Hopefully everything's going well in Chicago.
We get by. So let me ask you about the Essence system, because of course one of the issues, and it was discussed at the briefing last evening, President Trump's briefing, about the pandemic preparedness, number one, and then number two about tracking all the data that we're trying to cobble together to get a real-time picture of how the virus is spreading and to inform the decisions that are being made. And really, the picture is quite incomplete. We have sort of top-line data, but we don't have it broken out very well to really inform, at least on the vector of severity, if not some of the others. Your response to that, and then how your Essence system plays into this.
Well, the Essence system I designed actually back before even 9/11 happened. And it was really designed to look at early warnings of outbreak of bioterrorism, things such as anthrax. And where we found the most utility is actually we were able to predict or recognize, I should say, that there's a potential outbreak of, say, influenza within 1 or 2 days, whereas the CDC back at the time, it was taking about 6 to 8 weeks. So it was expanded after 9/11 to cover the entire Department of Defense, and subsequently the CDC and Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab have picked it up and really done a lot with it in the last 20 years, where it has it's a data mining system. And so, but it's only as good as the data that goes into it.
Right.
Now, you wrote an article that I'm reading right now about strategies for managing stress, because one way to boost your immune system is to not be stressed, and it's very hard in this day and age not to be stressed. And so just tell us some things that we should do so that we can stay healthy.
Well, it's really an area that I've become interested in, not just because of what's going on now, but just really seeing how much stress there's been in the world for the last few years. Certainly, get into an election year and people were, in politics, stressing everybody out. And the biggest issue is that stress hurts our immune system. So it's almost like this negative cycle. So now all of a sudden we've got all this crazy bad news, and it's stressing us out, and it's making us more susceptible to the virus that we're stressing out about. So it gets back to the basics of, kind of keep calm and carry on, like they said in World War II. But it's really if you're stuck at home, which most of us are, pay closer attention to eating healthy and exercise. It's, you've got to deal with what you got. So it's really about making good lifestyle choices. If you're holed up in your house, get outside, get some fresh air, get some sunshine if it's possible. Take a walk, hopefully in nature. But really the kind of concept of let's be thankful for the things we do have, be mindful of it. And now's not the time to be spending all your day on the couch eating junk food and candy and cakes and sugars and processed foods and things like that. Now's when you should really pay attention to how you're eating and now.
Because I had heard that 35-year-old doctor in China in Wuhan who kind of broke the story that he was young, he wasn't in the age group to get the virus, but that he was so stressed out because he was working 24-hour shifts that his immune system was lowered, and that's how he succumbed to coronavirus. Have you heard that?
That would make perfect sense, and that's exactly what I'm talking about trying to avoid, is don't let your immune system get run down. Get your sleep and do what you can to calm down and not stress out about this. And one of the biggest things, honestly, is turn off the news.
Yeah. Yeah.
I check the news 2 or 3 times a day, but I have friends and I know they want to know what's going on minute by minute or hour by hour. It's not going to change. It's not going to change your life. There's not enough news to fill in 24 hours a day.
I want to go back to your experience with infectious disease as well as the system that you developed, and you give us a bit of a comparison, contrast, if you will, because I know you were in Southeast Asia during the breakout of SARS in 2003. So you've seen the spread of viruses before. and then you developed a system like an early warning system for them. Give us a comparison contrast in terms of number one, the severity of the outbreak, your assessment, and number two, how effective detection was this time around as compared to previous outbreaks.
Well, I think the ability to detect this was better this time around than it was back in 2003. But I think part of the issue has been our access to this 24-hour news cycle. I mean, 2003, we had cell phones, but we didn't have this supercomputer in our hands and this 24-hour access. So partly we're not aware of all the things that were going on behind the scenes like we are today. But on the other hand, it's a new virus, and so it's not the influenza. Influenza changes incrementally each year, so we have some ability to recognize it. And then there's occasionally it takes a big leap, like in 1918, it took a big leap, and it was a whole new virus. That's what we're facing now. Is this COVID-19 is a new virus, and we don't, as a population, have any immune ability to react to it. So it is much more severe, and it's more infectious and spreading quicker than we saw in 2003. So we need to take it seriously, but I'm also worried about what are the long-term implications of our entire economy shutting down and the incredible financial and emotional stress that's going to put on people.
Well, you mentioned SARS, but what about in 2009 with H1N1, when 60 million Americans got that, 270,000 hospitalized and 13,000 dead?
Again, it's we know we have both vaccines potential that sometimes work and sometimes don't, that it changes every year for influenza, but we also have medications that can help treat influenza. We're still trying to figure out what medications might work. Apparently the medications that work for influenza aren't working for this coronavirus, and so it's you can't compare apples to oranges. They're just really two different viruses that we're having to learn day to day what works, what doesn't work, and how to win this fight.
And on the early warning infrastructure, the Essence system that you developed, anything else, as you mentioned, I just sort of want to underscore it. It's only as good as the data you get in. So, for example, if you have the Chinese communists not sharing data, not alerting the world to an outbreak when they get a sense of it, then there's no early warning system that's going to pick that up.
No, and that's one of the issues that the WHO really needs to address, and the world needs to put pressure on countries like China that have issues where the biggest problem, and the reason why it seems to always come out of China, at least recently in the last couple of decades, is just the close proximity of people and animals. These viruses generally come from the animal world and make a leap into humans when there's an incredibly close proximity, such as what they call these wet markets, where if you've ever been to Asia and you've been to a wet market, there's exotic foods and animals and people all crammed into one place, and it's not hard to imagine that these diseases would make the jump.
He is Dr. Michael Lewis, board certified and fellow at the American College of Preventive Medicine and American College of Nutrition, developer of the Essence program, the nation's first and largest syndrome-based disease outbreak recognition system used in every health department across the United States. Also the author of the book about sports injuries, particularly concussions, When Brains Collide. Dr. Lewis, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, and stay safe, Chicago.
Yes,
do the same.
and stay calm, and I appreciate it. I love this article. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. The Tokyo Olympics postponed. The China coronavirus is forcing adoption of online education nationwide. Those stories next.
The coronavirus is wreaking havoc here in the United States and across the globe. The stock market is plummeting. Sports leagues are suspending their seasons. Schools are sending students home, and the entire U.S. economy has been destabilized. Many experts say this is just the beginning. This is a devastating risk if you're heavy in stocks with no safeguard. Wise investors know to